Good morning, everybody. We're way up in northern Maine in a town called Strong. We're about an hour and a half away from the shop. Up here, this company has the front dump, so we get to use the front dump today. It'd be fun. Just 24 garage. It's on a Friday. We got actually 2 pours, so we got to go as soon as we get this dump. We'll leave a guy here. We got to go pour another one. Rain yesterday, so we got to help make up for yesterday a little bit. One more? A little bit?
Yeah, give it.
One more slump.
Yeah. One more slump.
Hey everybody, so we're going to be talking today about why this isn't wet concrete. I get a lot of comments about, hey, you pour your concrete's really wet, or you're pouring soup, and what I get from those comments are those people are just really not informed about concrete, or they just like making negative comments and they're pretty much ignorant to concrete. So this concrete, although it looks wet, it's flowable. There's a reason for it, and the main reason is we use water reducer in our concrete. So we can, when I order the concrete, like for today, this is a 24 garage. It's 4 inches thick, so it figures right around between 7 and 8 yards depending on the thickness of the concrete. So if I call them up and I say, I want 8 yards of concrete, I want 3,500 PSI, I want microfiber mesh in it, I want half air entrainment in it, but I also want mid-range water reducer. So I can ask them either for mid-range water reducer or high-range water reducer. And the difference is, it's just a few ounces difference per yard that they put in based on if you want mid or high. So if I ask for a mid-range water reducer, then they can batch out the concrete at about a 3-inch slump. They add the mid-range water reducer, and we can pour between a 6 or a 7 slump with the mid-range water reducer in it. That's why the concrete looks as flowable as it is, because we use that chemical in all of our pours that you see, all our floor pours, even our patio pours, our pool patio pours, everything that we do pretty much has that chemical in it. If you're just watching the video and you look at us pulling this stuff around or coming out of the chute, yeah, it does look wet. But have a little bit of intelligence before you make a comment. That's all I would say about that. And if you've never used water reducer before, just ask your batchman about it. If you're a concrete guy like we are, or a concrete girl, and you pour concrete a lot, and you're not using it, then you're probably pouring concrete a lot drier than you really need to, especially for stuff like this. This floor slopes 2 inches from the back towards the front. There's no floor drains. Most of the garages we do here in Maine have a slope to them like this. They'll either go, in a 24-foot garage, they'll either go 2 inches from back to front or 3 inches from back to front, and that's all the slope you need really if you know how to screed this right, to get the water to drip off car and run towards the garage door. What we do is, we'll just pour the concrete out. Now today we're using front dumps. We don't have the luxury of using front dumps every single day, but where we are pouring in the state today, we're quite a ways away from the shop. This company has all front dumps up here, so you can see, for us, honestly, this is going a little bit slow coming out of the chute. We pour a little bit faster than that when we use a rear dump, and then when I'm controlling the chute or Darren's controlling the chute, we can pour the concrete out of the truck a little faster than this. So we're kind of letting the driver go at his pace. We could tell him to speed it up a little bit probably, but where we don't use him every day, there's no real big hurry here. Now I kind of left the video in real time too. I didn't really, I cut very little out of this, and I didn't speed any of it up. And you can see the length of the video is just a little bit over 20 minutes. So it only really took us 20-ish minutes to get this garage floor poured with just the 3 of us. And that's with going as slow as the concrete truck drivers getting this poured out of the chute. One thing that, when you don't pour with these guys every day, one thing they don't know is obviously how fast you want to pour. But, for them having to judge the thickness, like how much concrete he gets in an area like right now, how much he dumps in that area without having to go back and forth to get it up to height is another thing that they have to kind of judge. Whereas if I'm holding the chute, if I'm grabbing onto the chute and it's loose and I'm moving it and I'm telling him how fast to dump it out, like I don't need to go back and forth because I know just how thick it is, how much concrete needs to be put in that spot. So I'm just going in one kind of slow and steady motion right across the whole floor while Luke comes behind me and he's kind of tuning it in, which is what he's doing right now. You can see me and Darren are kind of standing around waiting because the concrete's not coming out fast enough. But it's not like we're in a race or nothing. It's not that big a deal, but just something I like to point out. When a lot of guys, they never use rear dumps. They've always used front dumps. So this is kind of what you're used to right here is what I'm thinking. Now, it does take one less guy, obviously, because you don't have to run the chute. But it might not be necessarily faster than the way we do it. I'm going around, I'm magging all the edges. We show up. A lot of times we'll show up. As a matter of fact, most jobs will show up in advance and we'll get our grade shot because I need to know how much concrete to order. And a lot of times if, I do know the size of the garage, or maybe they'll send me a picture of it, so I'll get to see what it looks like all ready to go. But it's still hard to judge if just how good the subgrade is if you don't do the subgrade. And a lot of jobs like this one we work on, we don't do the subgrades. We just show up and we're hired here to pour and finish the floor. Somebody else grades the gravel. Sometimes somebody else will put the styrofoam in. Sometimes we will. So we have to show up in advance to check their dirt grade and see how good or bad the subgrade is. And a lot of jobs will show up. They'll just, on a floor like this that has slope in it and it's supposed to only be a 4-inch floor, they'll just grade the subgrade flat. So I have to put 4 inches of concrete over the garage door opening, which means I'll have to lift the floor up 2 inches in the back. So now the floor is going to be 6 inches thick in the back, 5 inches thick in the middle, and 4 inches thick by the garage door, which adds 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 yards to the whole pour. And I need to know that when I order trucks. If this truck here, legally in Maine, they can put 10.5 yards on it, even though he could probably hold 12 in that drum. He can only drive over the roads with 10.5. If the floor figures 11, then I have to tell the dispatcher I'm going to need 2 trucks instead of just one, because we're not going to wait to dump out 10.5 yards and have him, re-trip and bring back a half a yard. We're just going to want 2 trucks there and dump them right out as quick as possible. Now, this one only took 1 truck because the grade wasn't so bad that we needed more than 10.5 yards. But in most cases, when we show up on a job, the subgrade's off. And it's off usually an inch or 2, one way or the other. That's just how it is. Most of the guys up here, I don't think they even use lasers. I mean, if it was me, if I was grading a job like this with gravel, and I knew what the height of the concrete floor was, I would just measure down 4 inches from the top of the wall, make a pencil mark, snap a chalk line around the outside edge for my gravel grade, and then I know my exterior edges are going to be really good, and then I just set a laser up like I'm doing and check the middle. I mean, that seems just normal to me if you're doing some type of grading that needs to have, a certain level to it, versus just show up and eyeball it down from top of wall. Yeah, we're about 16 inches down. That looks good. I mean, some of the stuff we show up on is absolutely crazy. I've had to show up on jobs before where we're hired, where we're scheduled to pour the very next day. I show up the day before to check my grades. I can tell before I even get out of the truck, just driving in, how bad it is, how bad it looks. So then I get out and I check it with a laser, and sure enough, it's like 4 inches high in the front where the door is compared to the back. Like the subgrade is 4 inches off, and I'm supposed to pour a 4-inch floor. So what I do is I just call up the guy that hires us, and I tell him, hey, it's not even doable. This guy's got to get back here and regrade this. So I'll have to cancel for the next day, and they'll call the guy back and he'll have to come back and fix it. Or I've even had these guys are in such a hurry to get the floor done, they just pay for the extra concrete. They just say, go over the 4 inches in front, raise your grading back to whatever you need to be to get our slope, and we'll just pay for the extra concrete. So sometimes that even happens too. You know, they're paying for 6 extra yards of concrete just because they need the floor done. You know, they may have a building crew all lined up, and if they cancel the building crew, they're not going to get them back for 2 months. We hear that all the time. You know, the framers are coming. It's going to take them a week to get whatever this is framed up. You know, in this garage, it would probably only take them 2 or 3 days, but sometimes it's a house. You know, they only have those framers scheduled for a certain amount of time, and they can't wait for any delays. They got to get the floor done. Now, why the builder or the general contractor doesn't check the subgrade himself since he hired the guy, I have no idea, but that happens all the time. Now, this is how we screed stuff right here when we have very simple stuff to do. We could get out we got a power screed we could use, but when concrete floors are kind of this small, and you can pour with the water reducer, you can pour slumps like this that are real easy to move around. Sometimes we'll just screed them by hand like this. This is a really fast way of screeding, and it's really accurate because we're using a laser and we're shooting a pad in the middle with the laser that's verifying the height, and then we strike a pad to go by off that using the screed. Like, this is the most accurate way to screed concrete right here. There's no other way that's more accurate. I don't care what anybody says. After we get done power troweling this and sawing this, you can come back in with a laser and check it, and it will not be off more than 1/8 of an inch, you know, in 10 feet or 12 feet or whatever, other than, you know, the floor slopes from back to front. But we pour them flat this way, we pour them sloped this way. This thing's going to have a nice even slope right out the back, right out the front, I mean. And right there, I'm magging right in front of that 3-foot door. When we set the form for that 3-foot door, like, we'll set that form level. So when they go to set the door down, that area right there that I'm mag floating is level. It's not sloped, because that would have a slight slope to it, right? If the floor pitches from back to front. And now they're having to shim under the door. Well, we take that into account when we set the form, and then we just mag float the floor right in that one little area level. That's pretty typical of what the concrete looks like after it's been screeded too. You can kind of still see the aggregate at the surface. Even pouring that loose, the aggregate doesn't settle in the concrete. The concrete's really not that wet. It just looks like it's really flowable. Now, when we go to bowl float that, the bowl float will do its job, as you'll see here in a minute. And it'll just slightly settle that aggregate and bring up the cream and the paste in the concrete and give it a nice smooth finish before we power trowel it. Now, if you want to learn how to do concrete like we do, if you want to learn how to pour concrete floors or concrete slabs or any other type of concrete work that we do, you can join the Concrete Underground. In the Concrete Underground, I got all my training videos where I teach you, you know, all the stuff that we do here, how to shoot grades, how to screed, how to bowl float, how to mag edges, all the things you need to look for when you're doing concrete. I even got power troweling videos in there, all different types of finishing videos, stamp concrete, broom finish stuff. So basically, you know, if you wanna learn from me and learn how to do concrete, you can even connect with me in there, you know, either through the forum or through email. And then if we need to talk over the phone, you know, we could set up a call. We could talk about some stuff that way. Now we've got a little over half of this screeded. That's a 12-foot screed we're using right there. So we got over half of this screeded. We're about 14 minutes into the pour right now. And right now what we're doing is we're just checking the form on the front door. Even though, you know, we put up a nice straight form. It could be a 2x8, could be a 2x10. We always like to screed it and make sure it's perfect right there. That's just a secondary way of checking. I mean, you know what lumber's like. If it gets wet and it dries out, it could have a little dip in it. It could have a little hump in it. And we just don't want to leave that like that in front of the door, because that's going to be noticeable after they install the garage door and they set that down. So we always strike the door like that and make sure it's nice and level across there. Sometimes we'll even do it after we bowl float, is we'll restrike it and just double check it. That's a magnesium screed we're using, and that doesn't that doesn't warp or bow or anything like that. It's pretty rugged, even though it's really lightweight. So instead of using like a 2x4 or a 2x6 or something like that, we use those magnesium screeds. We got all kinds of them, all different lengths from 4 feet all the way up to 16 feet. And that's, again, that's as simple as it is to screed. We're each going by part of the floor that's already been either screeded to grade or magged to grade, you know, like on the outside wall where we snap a chalk line. So there's literally no room for error there. Darren's kind of raking the concrete behind us, making sure we're not too high, not too low. Then Luke and I can basically just keep going. Now I stopped right there. We were just a little bit high. We just didn't want to rake it over the form, make a mess right there. So we're shoveling it in a little pile over there where the concrete guy's washing out. And then the builder or the excavator, when he comes back, can just pick up that little pile with a skid steer, or he could bury it or whatever. And then we're not having to walk through it as we're finishing the concrete floor. You can see I'm bow floating. We like the 4-foot bow floats with the rounded edges, and then we got the tilt head on it. And basically, with this type of slump, we pretty much only have to push it down and pull it back, and it fills in everything really nice. Now, if I want to go over that a second time, I can. It's no big deal. But for the most part, the most pours we do, it's just down and back. And that makes bow floating really fast and really easy too. Now let me know in the comments, like, where you guys are from, where you're watching the video from, if you do concrete, if you do it like we do. If you don't, let me know if you have any questions about how we pour. Any questions about using water reducer in there. And, you know, check out the comments. There'll be some, I bet, in here that still say, we pour soup, you pour wet. Whether it's, you know, you can check out me on Instagram, everything about concrete. Check me out on TikTok, you know, everything about concrete, or Mike Day Concrete. I'm on Facebook, my Facebook page. I got a Facebook group you can join that we post stuff in there. The Concrete Ninjas. And then you can check out everything about concrete Facebook page. But follow all that stuff. Subscribe to me here on YouTube. I come out with a couple videos a week, all about all different types of concrete stuff. You know, answering questions about stuff, showing you how to do things, how-to videos. Just trying to help as many people, educate as many people as I can about the concrete business. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of people out there that want to teach others how to do concrete. You know, the average age of the concrete guy like us seemed to be going up. Darren over there on the right, he's been working for me over 30 years. Luke's been working for me over 25 years. You know, I've been doing this 45 years. We do have a young guy we finally got that works for us. He's not in this video, but we did find a young guy, and he seems to be working out really good. He just graduated from college. He's going in the service, reserves, but he's still going to go to college, so we're going to miss him for a little bit, but, you know, off and on, he'll be working with us. And it's just been a little bit of a struggle finding one other guy. It's nice, like a crew of 4 for us. We can do a lot of concrete because Luke, Darren, and I can all finish just about anything. Like, I can leave Luke or Darren just individually. I could leave them on a 3,000 or a 4,000 square foot floor with one power trowel, and they can finish that stuff by themselves, which makes it good so 2 of us can go do something else. And that's basically kind of the stuff we're doing every day. This just happens to be a small floor, so we'll leave one guy here, 2 of us will go do something else, whether it's forming something else or pouring something else that's basically making us money. And that's just kind of how the business runs. We try to do as much as we can with, you know, the people that we got, so we can earn a good wage, the company can make money. And that's kind of why and how we've stayed in business all these years, since basically 1988 is when I started this business. I went out on my own in 85, had a partner. We partnered. We stayed partners for a couple of years, and then we split up, and then I went out on my own. So, I've been in business for myself since about 1985, and then I've been doing this since about 1980. I worked for somebody else for a while when I was in my teens. I mean, that's basically it. I'm going to run the bull float down the edge, smooth up the edges a little bit. You'll see here in a second. Then I got that one little corner over there I got to finish up. We're at about 20 minutes right now on the video. And that's pretty darn fast for what basically took half that time just to get the concrete poured out of the truck. And then it took about 10 minutes to get it screeded. And now that I'm finishing up bull floating, you can see I'm not in any hurry here. That wasn't the point of the video when I first made the video. I ought to do that though. I ought to tell the guys, hey, let's get this poured as fast as we can. I want to make a video doing this just as absolutely fast as we possibly can, and just see how it compares to this. I bet we can cut 5, 6, 7 minutes off this easily. A little bit windy out today. You can see some leaves getting blown around. So what happens when I go over a leaf like that? Sometimes it gets stuck in the surface. When we get on it to power trowel, we'll just pull that leaf out, throw it off the side. What's really bad is like late in the fall, like late October up here, all those leaves would be falling out of the trees. It'd be like raining leaves here. So you kind of need to bring a leaf blower with you then as you're power troweling and blow all the leaves out of the way. Otherwise, your power trowel is just going to kind of start crunching them right in the surface. I'm going over this both ways again, and that's just going to help even flatten out that surface even more. Don't really need to if I don't want to. But you can see how nice of a surface that makes using that bull float, using that concrete mix design. Again, 3,500 PSI mix. We got microfiber mesh in it. You don't need wire on these floors. You don't need rebar. As long as the subgrade is compacted the way it should be and lifts really, really hard, this thing's not going to settle. It's not going to heave. It's not going to freeze in the winter if they use the right gravel inside there. The concrete walls are holding it in place like it can't go anywhere. And we're going to saw contraction joints, expansion contraction joints in this after we get done power troweling, and that's going to make it crack in those joints. So the concrete's just not going to crack up on its own. It's going to have a place to crack when it wants to shrink. And unbeknownst to most people, concrete just doesn't break up and crack if it's done right, especially with a really low water to cement ratio, a low slump concrete. Even though this was wet looking with the water reducer in it, it's a really low slump concrete. Concrete just doesn't crack on its own, guys. That's a myth. Unless you pour it and you don't know what you're doing, or you pour it over sand that's not compacted, or over some other subbase that's soft, and a car drives in here and it kind of flexes the concrete, it's not going to just break up. At least we don't have trouble with that. I'd never have trouble with that. If I show up and a subbase isn't done right, or if it feels soft, I call the guy out and say, hey, you got to get back here and compact this and do it right. So I'm not staying here to finish, but I'm taking my time because I know one of the guys is, and I'm just making sure it's bull floated really nice for them. And then one of the reasons we'll do that is we'll give this concrete as long as we possibly can. We'll let it get as firm as possible before we put the power trowel on it. And that way, it's going to cure up a little bit faster. If you get on this thing a little too early or a little too wet with the power trowel, it kind of slows down the power troweling process, is what we found. Especially this one's going to be in the shade a lot. The sun's not going to get up too high today, and the trees are going to block the sun. So the smoother it is right now, the longer Darren or Luke can leave it before they put the power trowel on it, and that'll just get them out of here a little bit earlier.
That was pretty fast. That's it for that. Now we're going to leave one guy here. We're going to head to another job.
get that poured, and you know, we're gonna finish that. That'll be a steel trowel finish by hand. Color job, we're gonna put color in on that one, but this one here, it'll be probably a couple hours, even though we did put accelerator in this today, but it's pretty chilly. It's only about 50 degrees, not gonna get much sun here. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.